beads. Very nice to chant on the beads of 108 mantras. So if you need beads, we have some beads in our gift shop on Japa Mala. Right? So if you don't have one, please take one Japa Mala today, and every day at least one round, 108 times Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We request everyone to chant. This is the special blessing of this age of Kali Yuga, that we can observe ourselves in this chanting of Hare Krishna. Okay, so thank you so much. So our next part of the program is we are going to have talk by His Holiness bkgoswami Goswami Maharaj. His Holiness bkgoswami Goswami Maharaj ki. And as I announced, after the talk, we are going to have the presentation by the Sunday school children that will be downstairs. We request everyone if you kindly come forward for the class. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Right. Thank you very much, Aditya Narayan Prabhu. And we want to thank everybody for coming here in spite of the weather today. For a while, I thought we were getting spring in North Carolina, and now, anyway, a brief interlude of winter has come to haunt us, to remind us of the nature of this material world. All springtime is not always there. There's a circulation of the seasons. Time is circular, not linear, right? So there's spring, summer, fall, winter. And then it starts again. Spring, and you think, oh, it's so nice. Spring, the flowers and the bees and the trees and the snakes. And then, and then the sarpas. And then summer, summer vacation, fall, and then winter, all the leaves fall off again. So that's the way life is, isn't it? Well, we're born, and there's so many expectations, like springtime. Birth is like springtime, isn't it? How cute that little baby is. And how that little baby smells so nice, isn't it? You smell the head of a little baby. And then they grow up, wow. And they reproduce, oh, that's nice too. Then they disintegrate. And then nobody smells their head when they're getting old. Nobody's done that to me in 70 years. So if I want that again, guess what? I have to take another birth and go through the whole cycle. So anyway, that's the way life is. So we have to have realistic, we've been talking about this before class, before I get into the classes topic. One should have realistic expectations about this world. I mean, it's a very nice place, Vishwapurna Shukayate, because it's an opportunity to become blissful and happy and Krishna conscious. And if one is blissful and happy and Krishna conscious, regardless of the circumstances, one will be happy. Whether it's fall or winter or spring or old age or youth, you're always happy. Vishwapurna Shukayate. Because you see the reason behind everything. If you don't see the reason behind everything, then sometimes you're happy and sometimes you're sad. It's called sukha dukkha. Sometimes you're going up, but what goes up must go down. And then you go up again. Woo, this is great. Oh my God. You up? Oh, okay, I forgot. Everything's going to be good from now on. Oh, you give me the garland if it'll fit. Will it fit? Yes, it fits. So, anyway, so we just remain steady. Krishna says the sages remain steady. Mantra sparsha stukantiya, right? Sukadukada, agama payana nitash tam shikshashva bharata. Once you learn to tolerate happiness, distress, heat and cold, pleasure and pain. And the way you're able to tolerate is by remembering Krishna. If you remember Krishna in every circumstance, see Krishna behind everything. Yomam pashati sarvacha sarvam chamaya pashati dashaham napanashama sacha mena pranashati. Once he's Krishna and everything in Krishna, then he's never lost to Krishna, and he's always connected with the source of bliss, who is Krishna. Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure. Remember that. You want pleasure? That's where you get it from Krishna. On that happy note, let's chant Jai Radha Madhava, and then we'll speak a little bit about today's topic. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopidana Malava Kiribadadare Gopi Janabalaba Kiribadadare Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tera Vanachadi Yamuna Tera Manachadi Jai Hurad Umayat Uba Kunya Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Prajadana Ranjana Sodanandana Prajadana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Parachare Yamuna Tera Manachari Jai Urad Umadava Kunja Vihari Jai Urad Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya all Satana Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Vilas Thakur ki jai. Namaste Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidvaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sayama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Vrindavanam ki jai, Mathuradam ki jai, Jagannath Swami ki jai, Yamunamai ki jai, Shimati Glasi ki jai, Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Gaur. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru Nitai Prabhupada ki jai, Namo Vishnaya Krishna Vistaya. Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Srinivadi Paschatya Deja Tarne Somaganata Vedandasha Vidanjana Shalakya Chakshura Medikam Vena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual masters, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So today we want to speak about something very much related with Lord Chaitanya. Because recently, for those of you who were fortunate enough to attend the program here, we had the celebration of Gaur Purnima. Gaur Purnima is the celebration of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance in this world. And as we mentioned then, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, but in the mood of Radharani. That's not what the topic of today's class is about. But when Lord Chaitanya appeared, he appeared with 4 associates. Now, Lord Chaitanya and the 4 associates are called the what? Panchatattva. Now, the word tattva is a very interesting word. It means like a category or an eternal truth. Tattva. It means the truth or a category of the truth. Like there's different tattvas. For example, there's the Jiva Tattva. That's most of us here in the room. I don't think there's anyone here who is Vishnu Tattva. If you're Vishnu Tattva, raise your hand. Oh, Krishna raised his hand. Did he raise his hand? And so, no, we are Jiva Tattva, the marginal energy of the Lord. That's our category. And then Radharani is Shakti Tattva. She's the Lord's energy. In fact, she's the Adi Shakti. Adi Shakti means the original Shakti. And Lord Chaitanya and Krishna are Vishnu Tattva. That means they or he is God. Just all the same person, but God. Now, there's many Shakti Tattvas and many Vishnu Tattvas and many Jiva Tattvas. Many Jiva Tattvas in this room. I mean, all the little buggies are Jiva Tattvas, right? And the microscopic creatures are Jiva Tattvas. And as far as the Shakti Tattvas in this room, that's Srimati Radharani. And all other Shaktis expand from her. You know, from Radharani comes basically the Lalita Shaka, and then the Astasakis, and other Saki, many of the other Sakis, some of them are Jiva Tattva. And then you have the wives of Krishna and Dwarka. And then you have Lakshmi and Narayan. And then after that, expand Durga, who is also Shakti Tattva. She's the mother of all of us. Lord Shiva, of course, is the father of every one of this material. Krishna is the ultimate father, Aham Bija Pradapita, as he says in the Gita. But this is Shakti Tattva. So today we're going to talk about one of the Jiva Tattvas who happens to be a member of the Pancha Tattva. Does that make sense? Pancha Tattva, or the 5. Or is it, in the 5 categories, there's actually only 3 categories in the Pancha Tattva. There's 5 persons, but there's 3 categories. So it's called the Pancha Tattva because there's 5 categories, 5 persons, and 3 categories. Like Lord Chaitanya is Vishnu Tattva, he's God. It means God category. And then you have Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram Hoilamtai, who is God category, Vishnu Tattva. And then you have Advaita Acharya, who is Sadashiva, who is Mahavishnu, and he is Vishnu Tattva. And then you have Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, who is Shakti Tattva, expansion of Radharani. And then, person we're going to talk about today, because his appearance day is on Wednesday, and you all won't be here. I will be here. But, this is Sunday religion. So, we just want to make sure everyone hears about this important personality. Since at this time of the year, basically we have these 5 persons appearing. We had Advaita Acharya, we had Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, and later on we'll have Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, and on Wednesday it's Srivasa Thakura. So who is Srivasa Thakura? Well, as I mentioned before, he's representing Jiva Tattva, representing us. Now, he is an incarnation, an avatar of Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, how did Narada Muni become Krishna conscious? This is really interesting. Because it gives hope to all of us. Narada Muni in his previous birth was not born in a Brahmin family. He was not born in a Kshatriya family or a Vaishya family or even a Shudra family. His mother was a maidservant. That's it. Simple maidservant. But he wasn't called Narada Muni at that point. He was a little boy, 5 years old. And his mother was a maidservant, and his mother was serving the great sages. They were called Bhakti Vedantas. That's interesting. That's Prabhupada's name, too. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. So what does Bhakti Vedanta mean? Bhakti means devotion. Vedanta means to know the conclusion of the Vedic literatures, the conclusion of knowledge, to be more precise. So what is the conclusion of knowledge? Vasudevam Sarvam Niti Samahatma Sadurlabha, according to Krishna in the Gita. That Krishna is everything. And he's different from everything simultaneously. I'm not going to get into that. That's Chincha Veda Tattva philosophy. But that's the conclusion. So these great devotees, they were visiting this ashram where Narada Muni and his mother were. The reason they were visiting and stayed for 4 months is because it happened to be the Chatur Masha period. Chatur Masha is the period of the rainy season where great sages execute great austerities because they have to stay in one place, and if they stay in one place, they may get attached to that one place. Isn't it when you stay in one place, just like I know I have a little ashram here, or a big ashram here, and after a while, all the clothes build up. I probably have 5,000 pairs of socks. So this is what probably. And so this is what happens when you stay in a place, isn't it? You go, like those of you who bought houses know that you move in, the house is empty, and then you go to the furniture store. What's the name of that furniture store? What? IKEA. IKEA. That's right. Everybody knows what IKEA is. You go to IKEA and you say, oh, isn't that nice? And then you go to, what's an expensive furniture store? Neiman Marcus. You don't know that. Amazon, no. So you go there and you start filling the house. The house fills up after a while. You move into the house and you can pack everything in a van when you first move in the house. And then after a while, if you want to move to another house, you have to have 3 giant moving vans. And then it gets so unwieldy, sometimes you just sell all the stuff and just buy new stuff in the new house. So that the problem is when you remain in one place, you get attached to everything. And so the sannyasis, to avoid getting attached when they had to remain in one place, because the rain meant everything was washed away. All the roads were washed, the paths were washed away. So they just engaged in very severe austerities. Like you hear about this Ishba Panchaka at the end, isn't it? When I hear about these things, I get horrified. one day you have to live by drinking cow urine, the next, isn't it? I said, oh my God, what sort of austerities? And you have to do nirjal and all these things. So that was good because that way you didn't get attached. You know, how are you going to get attached when you're not eating that much and you're just drinking cow urine? It's just like, you know, hope this ends soon so I can travel again. Isn't it? Thank God Chaturmasya's over. So that's the reason. And nowadays you don't have to do those austerities because our austerity is chanting Krishna's name. When Prabhupada was present, if you were to go to Prabhupada and say to Prabhupada, I did all these austerities, I fasted for this and I fasted for that, and I just drank cow urine for 3 months. I think, you know, some devotees did that. They went to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would say, go out and distribute some books, do something practical. Because this is a Sankirtan movement. Because the same benefit that people would get for years and years of austerities in the Himalayas or following Chaturmasya can be had in 2 seconds by preaching Krishna consciousness. Who's a ditch by distributing books, Prabhupada's books, for example, or giving other people Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna says in the Gita, for one who teaches this Bhagavad Gita to his devotees, that person is what? Most dear. Never will there be one more dear to me than he or she who reaches out and teaches this Bhagavad Gita. So, wow, I don't have to drink urine anymore. So, so anyway, but in those ages, that wasn't the time of the Sankirtan Yajna. That was the time of heavy austerities for sannyasis. Thank God I was born in Kali Yuga. Isn't it? Kaler doshara de rajan, asyeko mahadguna, kirtana deva krishnasha mukta sandal paramajet. It's an ocean of difficulty, but there's one good point. You just chant Hare Krishna, and you go back to Godhead. And follow a few simple rules and regulations. I was listening to a talk or a discussion that Prabhupada had with one of my godbrothers before he became my godbrother. His name was Bob Cohn, who later on became Brahmatirtha. It's really funny. Like Prabhupada was preaching, spending a lot of time preaching. He said, and Bob Cohn said, I don't know if I can actually become a devotee. And Prabhupada said, what's the difficulty? You just have to follow the 4 regulated principles. How many are you following? And he said, well, 1, maybe 2. And he was in India, too. And this was so interesting. I don't think this came out in the book, but it was really interesting. And then Prabhupada said, which ones are you following? And he was working for the Peace Corps. You know what the Peace Corps is? And he was working in Bihar with in the villages of Bihar. And he said, while working for the Peace Corps, I just gave an advertisement for you. How distributing books is more valuable than 3 years of austerities and drinking cow urine during the Chaturmas period. So, so what he was doing, he said, all my friends, now this is a really interesting thing. He said, all my friends at night after we've done our work, we all get together and just smoke ganja together. Grows everywhere by the side of the road. You don't have to buy it. So, and Prabhupada said, you know, why are you hanging out? You used the word, you know, why are you associating with your friends? He said, these are my friends. I won't have any friends if I do that. And he said, in Kali Yuga, you could see how difficult it is for people to follow regulated principles. Later on, he became a great devotee by Prabhupada's mercy. I was listening to this morning while I was doing my deity worship. And I was just thinking, wow, I didn't know this history. And then he said, I'm really trying to be a vegetarian. But, you know, I can't give up the eggs. I was just thinking, oh, my God. things are so easy. But in Kali Yuga, this is austerity for the conditioned souls. To give up those things, isn't it? I mean, somehow or other, it's really difficult. I don't understand how, but it's just difficult. I mean, because as soon as I heard Prabhupada chanting, I just said, all right, I don't need anything else. But yeah, that's Prabhupada. You know, hear Prabhupada. So here's the story of Narada Muni. It very much relates to it. So here are these great sages, 4 months of the rainy season. And they were chanting and doing their austerities. And during the 4 months of the rainy season, Narada Muni happened to be serving them. He was engaged as a servant. His mother was a maidservant too. And what he did is one time he took initiation. He got a mantra from them. They were very pleased with him, and they said, here's this mantra you should chant. I'm not sure which mantra, maybe like that. And so after the 4 months of the rainy season, they left, of course. And something very unfortunate happened. His mother passed away. And then he was left without any protection, 5 years old, left without any protection. But because he had received the mercy of these great devotees, the Bhaktivedanta, he just became detached and started to wander all over the world, a 5-year-old boy wandering all over the world. And as he was wandering, he was chanting the mantra he was given. And one time he was meditating and he saw Krishna. Krishna appeared and said, this is the only time you're going to see me in this lifetime. And then at the end of that life, it's described he took birth like the thunder and the lightning as Lord Brahma's son, as the great Narada Muni. So that's Narada Muni. The reason I told this story is it illustrates how someone in any condition can become a great devotee. I mean, that gives hope to all of us, isn't it? You can become like Narada Muni. You can travel all over preaching Krishna consciousness. Isn't that nice? You can have a spiritual body. You can be a good musician. He plays his Veena. Narada Muni Bhaja Veena Radhika Ramana Namane. Isn't that? So any of us can achieve that if we want. Or if we want some other destination, like a coward boy, gopi, what that. You know, eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. Isn't that amazing? To me, that story gives hope. And there's many other stories too. But the reason I'm telling the story about Narada Muni is that he was representing us as a member of the Panchatattva, representing the Jiva souls as a member of the Panchatattva. And as the member of the Panchatattva, he appeared before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was quite older than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was like the age of Lord Chaitanya's mother and father, Jagannatha Mishra and Sachi Mata. And so he really, his wife Malini was actually friends with Sachi Mata, and he was friends with Jagannath Mishra. And he was such a great devotee. Actually, he manifested his devotional inclinations way before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. In fact, he would be chastising Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not manifesting devotional inclination. That's before Lord Chaitanya took initiation. We have to see all these examples. Before Lord Chaitanya took initiation, he didn't manifest his devotional inclinations. Now, he always had them because he was always Krishna in the mood of Radharani, but he didn't manifest them because he wanted to teach us a lesson by example. Yad yada charitai, shreshtas tat tat, evetarojanaha. The necessity of good association with approaching the spiritual master, which he did. So, before would chastise him because he was quite old. You know, by etiquette, he was much older than Lord Chaitanya, therefore he could chastise him. And he would call Lord Chaitanya a very arrogant person. He said, you're the best, he used the word, crest jewel of the arrogant. In other words, you're the most puffed up, prideful person I've ever met in my life. That's really what Chris Jewell is. You're the perfect example. He would actually chastise Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, he would say, do you know the purpose? No, Srivasa Thakura would say, do you know the purpose of life? And Lord Chaitanya would say, by your mercy, I will know later on. And I will become such a great devotee that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva will worship me. So Srivasa Thakura was thinking, I thought he was proud of his scholarship, but this is a little too much. You imagine if you approach someone and you try to convince them, be Krishna conscious, why waste your time in scholarship at the university? And he says, by your mercy, I'll become such a great devotee that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva will worship me. This guy has psychological problems. That's how Srivasa thought. But then, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, came back after initiation, he sat on the throne, the Singhasan, the deities. You can imagine someone does that. Or Lord Chaitanya did that, and he manifested 4 arms. And he said to Srivas, look, I'm the person you've been worshiping all along. Offer obeisances. So Srivas really became ecstatic hearing that. And the reason I had the paper, I just wanted to read this one quote from the Chaitanya Bhagavad of Srivasa Thakura's words. My obeisances at the lotus feet of the support of the entire universe, Vishwambar, whose bodily color is like that of a newly arrived rain cloud, and whose garments are the color of a thunderbolt. Referring to Krishna here. My obeisances at the lotus feet of the son of Sachi, who is bedecked with ornaments of peacock feather and garland of red beads, that's Kunjamala. My obeisances at the lotus feet of the people of Gangadas, the beauty of whose lotus face conquers that of 10 million moons. My obeisance at your lotus feet. You who carry a buffalo horn, stick, and flute, the 4 Vedas have proclaimed you to be the son of Nanda Maharaj. I offer my obeisances to you again and again and again. So that was his first realization of who Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chose Srivasa Thakura's house to inaugurate his Sankirtan movement, to start the chant. Of course, at that time, before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really did things widely, got everybody chanting, Lord Chaitanya started Sankirtan in a private way at Srivasa Thakura's house. So private that they would have a guard at the door to make sure that everybody who came in was a pure devotee. Can you imagine that? We should do that here. Whoop. We'd only have Prabhupada Vyasa-san here. That would if we did that. So, but Prabhupada one time said all of his followers are pure devotees if they're following strictly, because they're going to be pure devotees like a little bud of a flower that's going to become a flower ultimately. So they stationed someone at the door and they wouldn't let people in. And so many things happen at this, in the Anga, called Srivasa Angam, the house of Srivasa Thakura, which is very close to where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. And right next to Srivasa Thakura's house was Advaitacharya's house in Mayapur. Advaitacharya, of course, also had his main house in Shantipur. But to take part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he moved temporarily to Mayapur. So many interesting pastimes occurred there, and Lord Chaitanya would oftentimes test Srivasa Thakura's devotion to see how devoted he was. I mean, one time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was having a kirtan, and Lord Chaitanya was in complete ecstasy during the kirtan at Srivasa Thakura's house. And during that kirtan, Srivasa Thakura's son, little son, passed away. And Srivasa Thakura noticed that his wife and the other ladies were spouting tears. And he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Your son has passed away." And he says, "Better not interfere with Lord Chaitanya's kirtans. So stop that crying." Can you imagine how heavy that is? When your child has passed away, you can't cry, you can't show any emotions. He didn't want to interfere with Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. But then after the kirtan came to a close, Lord Chaitanya said, "Something has happened to you in this house." And Srivasa Thakura said, "No, there's nothing. Don't even worry about it." And he said, "What happened?" And Srivasa Thakura revealed, my son has passed away. And Lord Chaitanya said, "Why didn't you stop the kirtan and tell me?" And Srivasa Thakura said, "I didn't want to interfere with your ecstasy." And Lord Chaitanya said, "Show me where your son is, where the body is." So he went into the room where the body of Srivasa Thakura's son is. And he said, "Why?" He put his hand on the chest of the little boy. He said, "Why have you left Srivasa Thakura?" And then the son began to preach philosophy. He said, "Many, many births have I had, and now I passed away during your kirtan, and it's back to home, back to Godhead." And then he left and went back home, back to Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya gave his son the highest benediction, the highest mercy. Other interesting pastimes occurred in Srivasa Thakura's house during the kirtan. As I mentioned before, it was only allowed the pure devotees were there, so sometimes other people snuck in. Like Srivasa Thakura's mother-in-law snuck in one time, and she wasn't a pure. It was nothing against mothers-in-laws. We like them, but she didn't belong there. And there were ladies there. There were other mother-in-laws, but not this one. So she was hiding behind the curtains and drapes, actually. So he was hiding behind the drapes, and Lord Chaitanya kept saying, "There's someone here who doesn't belong here. Someone doesn't belong in this place. Someone's here." And everyone was looking around, and finally they find this lady behind the curtains. And she says, "Throw her out." And then Lord Chaitanya was able to regain his ecstasy at that particular point. And then another time, a Brahmin came in, and Srivasa Thakura led him in at that particular point. And this Brahmin was very austere. He lived just on drinking milk. And Srivasa Thakura was thinking, he must be a great devotee. Must be a great devotee. Because he's just drinking milk. He's not doing anything else. And Lord Chaitanya had the same reaction. He said, "Someone's here that doesn't belong." And Srivasa Thakura said, "This Brahmin is very pure." And Lord Chaitanya said, "You're not going to be pure at this point. Milk and executing austerities." And so the Brahmin, he had a change of heart. And he realized that his austerities were not going to get him in Krishna consciousness. And so he apologized, and then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him. So anyone associated with Srivasa Thakura got Lord Chaitanya's mercy, even if they weren't following the regulated principles. Srivasa Thakura had and this is how important it is to have the association of devotees. I mean, not that you shouldn't follow the regulated principles. I'm not trying to give you that example. But, all right, I have the association of a great devotee, Guru Maharaj, can't follow the no. But in this particular case, Srivasa Thakura had a tailor, and his tailor was a meat eater. And Lord Chaitanya blessed him with pure devotional service. And anyone who offended Srivasa Thakura, he ended up in trouble. I mean, there's two stories I can think about. I remember about people who offended Srivasa Thakura. One was the story of Gopal Chapala. Gopal Chapala was upset because he wasn't allowed into the kirtan because he wasn't a pure devotee. So he thought, I'm going to get Srivasa Thakura in trouble. I'm going to make an arrangement so it seems that Srivasa Thakura is worshiping Durga, not Krishna. So he puts all the ingredients for worshiping Durga outside Srivasa Thakura's door in the middle of the night, like vermilion and different things like that. And Srivasa Thakura wakes up in the morning, And he sees all of these ingredients, and he says, okay, everybody knows I'm worshiping Durga, no problem. So he's not even concerned about his reputation. That's a devotee, not concerned with reputation. And so Krishna was upset, though, and this Gopal Chapala got leprosy right after that. And that Gopal Chapala went to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and said, you are the most munificent. Free me from this leprosy. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, because you've offended Srivasa Thakura. This is a very important lesson for us. Because you offended Srivasa Thakura, you're going to be bitten by these same worms for millions of lifetimes. Oops. Imagine, Lord Chaitanya is so munificent, but he doesn't tolerate offenses to his devotees. And so then what happened is that eventually Gopal Chapala went to Srivasa Thakura, begged for forgiveness, and he got free of his leprosy. Just one other quick story about this. Another person offended Srivasa Thakura because one time Srivasa Thakura was walking by a Bhagavatam class given by the other devotee, Devananda Pandit. And Srivasa Thakura heard the Bhagavatam and he started shivering and rolling on the ground in ecstasy. And Devananda Pandit's disciples just threw Srivasa Thakura out of the class, offended him. And Devananda Pandit, because he allowed that to happen, lost his ability to understand the Bhagavatam. And every time when Lord Chaitanya would walk by the class, the classes were given in the open, of Devananda Pandit, Lord Chaitanya would say, he will never understand the Bhagavatam. Never understand the Bhagavatam. Finally, this Devananda Pandit got the mercy of another devotee and apologized to Srivasa Thakura. The way he got the mercy of this other devotee, the other devotee's name was Bkeshwar Pandit, who used to dance for 72 hours without, this is Lord Chaitanya's associates, 72 hours without stopping. Lord Chaitanya said, you're like the wing of a bird. If I had two of you, I could fly in the air. Like that. So he guarded Bkeshwar Pandit while Bkeshwar Pandit was actually had this dance and the people were crowded around him. And because of that, then Lord Chaitanya gave him the instruction to take Srivasa Thakura and get Srivasa Thakura's mercy, and then he was able to understand the Bhagavatam. And Lord Chaitanya always took care of Srivasa Thakura. He didn't have to work a job. He didn't have to make a living anyway. Lord Chaitanya asked Srivasa Thakura, how do you make a living, support your big family? Because his family was quite big. One of his family members was Narayani, his niece, and she was the mother of Vrindavan Das Thakur, who is the author of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, one time gave Narayani some special mercy. He gave some remnants that he had eaten, remnants of the food, and she started rolling on the ground and crying in ecstasy. All these things happened at Srivasa Thakura's house. And so then Lord Chaitanya asked Srivasa Thakura, how do you maintain yourself? Srivasa Thakura says, I have this 1, 2, 3 technique. What's the technique? Don't do this. You shouldn't do this. He said, if I have to fast for 3 days, then I'll tie a stone on my legs and throw myself into the Ganges. And Lord Chaitanya said, don't ever talk like that. Even if the goddess of fortune has to go begging, Lakshmi goes begging, it's quite incredible. You will always have enough. You will always have enough. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya, as Mahaprabhu, started his Sankirtan movement in coordination with Srivasa Thakura, Narada Muni, his great devotee. And that Narada Muni was previously the son of a maidservant. Wow. It's interesting. So it goes from being the son of a maidservant to Narada Muni to Lord Chaitanya's associate, who appears whenever Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. Does that give hope to all of us? Think about it. Just by association, sadhu sangha, sarva shastra hoy, lava matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. Just a little moment's association and service. That vini pranivatena pariprashnena sevaya, as the Bhagavad Gita says. By rendering service, approaching, inquiring submissively, and rendering service. So today we are talking about Srivasa Thakura's holy appearance, which occurs on Wednesday, but today Sunday, so we thought it would be interesting for all of you to hear about since he's a member of the Panchatatva. And we have recently been celebrating Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Acharya's appearance. And soon we'll celebrate Radha Swami's appearance. So it's a good time. See? Krishna my heart. So anybody have any quick questions before we go down and we see the students' presentation? Questions about Srivasa Thakura or Narad Muni? Yeah. Yes, did you? Yeah. Yeah. I think that's quite interesting. That normally he's like a Kunda Brahmachari, Naishtiki Brahmachari. And all of a sudden he's married with a kid. So that shows, actually what that proves is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement, Kiva Vipra Kiva Nyashi Shudrakena Nine. Ye Krishna Tattva Se Guru Hoy. That as far as Krishna consciousness is concerned, that one could be married or sannyasi or vanaprastha or a child or a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. Say Guru Hoy. If one knows the science of Krishna, one can be guru, in fact, and be Krishna conscious. And really, that's showing it's not really that important. I mean, sometimes devotees wanted to follow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and leave their home. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't ever talk like that when he was South India. There was devotee Vasudeva. He wanted to follow him. He said, just go back home. Stani Sata. Shrutikatam Tan Van Manobir. Just stay where you are and chant Hare Krishna. And bring others and expose others to the holy name. So to become Krishna conscious, there's no advantage to being a sannyasi. In fact, there's maybe disadvantages to being a sannyasi. What are the disadvantages? Well, the disadvantage, I'm trying to think of disadvantage. It's a good question. The disadvantage is you get people respect you because you're a sannyasi. That could be a danger. The Danam, the Janam, the Sundarim. Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye. That's a disadvantage. So in Kali Yuga, it's generally not recommended. But for spreading Krishna consciousness, we can dress or take any particular ashram. This is a higher principle. Not for becoming Krishna conscious. For becoming Krishna conscious, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what ashram you're in. But for traveling and preaching, it's helpful not to have to travel with 10 family members. It gets kind of expensive. I mean, the reason I don't travel with a servant is it's too expensive. Isn't it? Traveling's expensive, especially in an airplane. So imagine, someone had a wife and 3 kids, you have to be a multi-millionaire to travel. I mean, actually, there is one couple that travels with their children, and they preach, but they're very wealthy. Param and Goramani. And so they travel everywhere with their children, and they do kirtans, and people help with the expenses too. So that's all right too, but it's a lot easier for me to get in the plane. A lot easier and a lot cheaper. So therefore, Srivasa Thakura is showing us that it really doesn't matter. Previous ages, sure, if you wanted to become God conscious, you have to wait until you were like 50 years old and you leave your kingdom. Like you hear about all these kings that at 50 or 60, they would leave. Of course, Dhritarashtra waited a little longer. He had to wait till his teeth were falling out. That's what Vidura said to him, isn't it? He said, you were already blind, now your teeth are falling out. You're pretty useless, and Bhima is making fun of you all the time, like hitting his muscles. So, you better get out of here. But traditionally at 50, like you hear about Priyavrata and some other great personalities, 50 or 60, they would head for the hills. One of us did that too. But in this day and age, that is not recommended. Stani sata shrutikatam tan van manobir. Just stay where you are and engage in this Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. And as we mentioned in the beginning, if you want to become very dear to Krishna, then you give Krishna consciousness to others. You can help with the book distribution or some way like that. And then that's the secret. Like Prabhupada was never impressed with austerities. Prabhupada himself did not externally take on more austerities. Prabhupada was asked, he said, it's austere enough. You don't have to invent more austerities. When Prabhupada was asked about all these different austerities. Even on the Ekadashi, Prabhupada, of course, didn't eat grains or beans, but he'd have the devotees make special, Ekadashi preparations. And there's so many nice stories of Prabhupada, he'd like to take nice prasadam. Even when the devotees tried to give him very simple boiled vegetables for his health, he said, let the starvation committee go to hell. So the Prabhupada wasn't into those austerities, but he was so much into giving other people Krishna consciousness, he was willing to undergo any sort of painful situation, such as when he went to Kumbh Mela, and it was freezing. And Prabhupada at that time was, 80 or something like that. And it was freezing if anyone's been to Kumbh Mela at that particular time, February, isn't it? And, it's just like freezing. Prabhupada couldn't even they had to bring the Triveni water to Prabhupada and heat it up so Prabhupada could take a bath. And Prabhupada did that austerity. And in his final days, years, to preach, to give other people Krishna. So that is our austerity. That's the pasha we call it. So I think, yes, one other question. Yes. To everyone. But even when he gave the holy name to everyone, he didn't show the same ecstasies publicly. Because he wanted to show his ecstasies there. He wanted to engage in very intimate, loving exchanges. Like we see with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only talked about the most intimate subject matters when he was at Jagannath Puri with Ramananda Roy, Sikamahiti, sister, and Swarup Damodar Goswami. So these were very intimate exchanges in Srivasa Sangha. It wasn't just like, let's go on Harinam. Normally when we go on Harinam, not too many devotees start rolling on the ground and crying and tearing at their clothes and saying, where is Krishna, I don't think we would allow that. I mean, yesterday we were out there on during the parade, and everyone pretty well behaved themselves. I didn't see too many symptoms. Too many symptoms. Did you see any? No symptoms like that. I mean, we were happy. We were waving. That's a symptom of ecstasy. But nothing, no rolling on the ground or anything like that. So if you're going to roll on the ground, make sure it's with pure devotees. In private, not in the temple room, not on Harinam Sankirtan. So that's the difference. That's the reason why Lord Chaitanya continued to, even when he had his external Sankirtan, he went to the Kazi and convinced the Kazi, stop harassing his devotees. Still, it wasn't those symptoms of ecstasy that were being exhibited. Does that make sense? Okay, I think it's time. We have the children doing a little presentation. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. So let's express our gratitude to His Holiness bkg Goswami Maharaj for the wonderful class on the glories of Srivasa Thakura. Haribo! Thank you. His Holiness bkg Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. So as Maharaj mentioned, we are the Sunday school After their 8 weeks, every 8 weeks they finish one session. So they're going to do the presentation. It's going to be downstairs in the Prasadam Hall, Prabhupada Hall. Before we go, I would like to thank the devotees who sponsored the feast today. I saw, oh yeah, Mataji. So we'd like to thank Ganesh Prabhu and Kiran Mataji for sponsoring the feast today on occasion of their son Aditya's birthday. Ready? So is he here? Oh, right there. Okay, Aditya is right here. Okay. So let's pray for Aditya and let's loudly chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra as a prayer to Sri Sri Radha Golokanath to shower their blessings on the Aditya. So let's loudly chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Sri Radha Golokananda ki jai. Thank you so much, Prabhu, Mataji, for sponsoring the feast, and we wish all the best to Aditya. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll go downstairs now, and the sooner we can go and settle down, the children are ready to do their presentation. So let's proceed downstairs, and then after that, prasadam will be right immediately after the presentation. Srila Prabhupada ki Hare Krishna.